Hello everyone. There is a famous saying that education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. While this quote is a food for thought for all of us, it is also important to note that the way we educate our future generation or the students also needs to be changed. Quality education is one of the key issues also highlighted in SDG goals, specifically Sustainable Development Goal 4. Poor education quality can be due to a number of factors, such as lack of qualified teachers, inadequate resources, and overcrowded classrooms. As a result, many students leave the school without the basic knowledge or skill that they need to succeed in life. Caring with Color, a Manasi Kirloskar initiative, is working on bridging the gap between traditional and experiential teaching methods in government schools to empower the students with 21st century skills. Today we have with us Mr. Rajeev Annaluru, Trustee of Caring with Colors, which is a non-profit organization working towards solving for quality education. Mr. Rajiv is an electrical engineer and an IIM Ahmedabad alumni and is working on a mission to set up experiential learning standard for all government schools in India. Let's get started with this interesting conversation today. Caring with Color is a unique name. I am sure that it must be having some significance. So if you could put some insights on the name significance and what Caring for Color is all about.
Caring with Color is definitely a very interesting name. It is whenever we go into the field, we do get a lot of enthusiastic questions about. It's a very unique sounding name, so it's a very common question that we get. I think the name really goes to the story of our founder, Manasi Kirloskar. She's a wonderful artist, right? And she's also someone who is very passionate about working at the grassroots level. She used to actually conduct painting and drawing classes for government school kids when she was all of 13, 14 years old, something like that. And from what I learned, she conducted a very unique kind of art exhibition, right? She trained a lot of the kids in the government schools to draw and paint, and she conducted an arts exhibition through that painting. And the name of that exhibition was Caring with Color.
Oh, okay.
And that name stuck with her. And when she was considering, doing something in the social sector space, obviously that's a name that resonates so deeply with her and so passionately with her. So she used that name to name the organization. So that's really the genesis, right? It's a name coming out of that passion and commitment that she has towards the work that she wants to do in the education sector at the grassroots level. So that's really the background story. So it's really very closely linked with the kind of story that our founder has.
Right. I think that's a great thought and a story behind the name Caring with Colors. And actually, when something personal related to your life is connected to the work which you are doing, there is a different kind of passion which comes with it, right? So, and I think it truly signifies the cause as well. So, very unique and thoughtful name, I must say.
Yes.
So, if you can just elaborate what work you are doing with Caring with Colors in the education sector.
Yeah, sure. So, essentially, the core idea behind what we do is we said we need to improve the quality of the outcomes in the education system, right? And quality of outcomes, not just purely from the viewpoint of how do we make sure students will get better marks in the exam. That's a very, very narrow definition of what an outcome can be. But we asked ourselves, what does it mean for children to be educated, across the country, and how do you ensure that all of this really adds up to the future generation having a healthy and productive life, right? And there is substantial philosophy that is already established in this space, where our education policies have already talked about what does it mean to educate the kids in a qualitative fashion, and they talk about how skills need to be developed, how really education is the kindling of the the heart and the soul and the mind of a child, and all of that need to add up to the holistic development of the child, going into the future.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to for achieving that goal, what needs to happen in the education system, and consequently what needs to happen inside the classroom, right? Because learning really happens inside a classroom between a teacher and a child, and the quality of this learning is determined by the quality of the transaction that happens between the teacher and the child. And our educational policies have been very clear and very specific, in the sense that you cannot focus only on information, you cannot focus only on rote learning for the sake of exams, and the learning process must be arts integrated, it must be experiential, it must be hands-on, it must be relevant to the actual lived reality of the child, it must be very contextual for the child, whatever the context that the child lives in. And all of that must add towards building of the skill of the child, so that the skills can actually be utilized once when the child grows up, right? And that is something that has been established in our education policies for a very long time now.
Right.
Even going back into the National Education Policy of 1986 and even the NCF 2005, it very strongly talks about the need for the classroom transaction to be constructivist. Right? Another way to say it really needs to have a very hands-on, holistic learning process inside the classroom. Now, the same ideas have also been carried on into our current educational policies of, the latest one, NEP 2020. It emphasizes quite a bit on the need for education to be experiential, so that skills can be developed, right? And it talks so much about how the future of the industry really needs a skill focus and not just the regular, academic focus that we have in the schools. Right. So when you put that as the cornerstone for what needs to happen inside the classroom, and then you take a look at what is actually happening inside the classrooms, there is a huge gap. Right. So when we started off back in 2017, we took that step back and we evaluated what does it mean for the education system to have this robust kind of teaching methodology and robust quality inside the classroom. And when we did all our studies, we found that the best way to enhance the quality of the education system is to enhance the quality of transaction that happens inside the classroom. Right. And quality of transaction needs to move in the direction of an experiential teaching learning methodology, right? So we based all our research work, right? The first few years of our organization was completely focused on how do we establish experiential teaching learning as a system inside a government school or a government classroom. So we developed systematically all the research that is required, what kind of pedagogical methods need to be evolved to teach the same curriculum that's already being taught inside the classroom, but instead of a blackboard teaching rote learning kind of a method, how do you now start teaching the same concepts in an experiential way to the students? So we did all that work, and all of that cumulatively added up to now where we are at a point. We not only have all this content that we have created that teachers are using. We also train teachers very rigorously on what experiential teaching learning methods actually are. And we have a very systematic training process where we enhance not only the subject knowledge skill of the teacher, but also the pedagogical skill that is required to start teaching experientially. And then we provide all the content that we have developed to the teachers as well. The one area where we really have a unique kind of a program proposition is where there's a third component that we look at, which is how do we create an enabling environment for a teacher to start adopting experiential teaching learning methods. What that means is you can take a teacher, you can train her all you want, you can give her all the content that you want, but if the working environment of the teacher is not conducive for her to adopt these experiential teaching learning methods, it becomes a day-to-day struggle for her to use these new methods. Even knowing how to use it, she will not be able to use it. Like, for example, if the department hierarchy above her, especially for a government school teacher, there is a very large hierarchy of government school government officers that are above her, right? From her principal to the cluster level officers, block level officers, district level officers. There is a, this whole, batch of people who are supposed to be overseeing what a teacher is doing inside a classroom and how she's teaching. And if, let's say, imagine an officer walking into the classroom and a teacher is conducting experiential teaching activity, and the officer says, what is all this nonsense? Why don't you just open the textbook and teach what is there in the textbook and get done with the syllabus, right? The entire work that you would have done by training the teacher in experiential teaching methods, all that gets thrown out of the window, and the teacher falls back onto the regular conventional teaching methods. Right. So how do we now create a unified vision for the entire education system in a way that, regardless of whether it is the curriculum development officers or the people who train the teachers or the officers who are supposed to monitor the performance of the teacher inside the classroom, if all of them are aligned towards the same goal of helping and supporting teacher to teach experiential inside the classroom, right? If you are able to achieve that alignment across the department, and then you train the teacher on all these teaching methods, and then you provide her whatever content, supporting content is required, the probability with which teachers start adopting, right, it is much higher, because they now know that not only am I being trained, but even the officers above me, they're expecting me to teach through these methods. And I also see that all the other teachers in my ecosystem are also doing the same. So I don't want to be left behind, right? So there is something of a peer learning and peer effect that comes into play, where all the teachers are starting to adopt this kind of a teaching method. All of that cumulatively adds to creating a very, very supportive and conducive environment for the teacher inside the classroom. And hence, which is why, when we conduct our programs in Tumkur and Ramnagar, the adoption rate for experiential teaching learning methods is very high, right? So it's kind of a very comprehensive program package that we have created, where we have not only developed very rigorous research-based content, research-based training methods to train the teachers on experiential teaching learning methods, but we also run a whole slew of initiatives with the education department officers, so that everybody is aligned towards the same goal, and everybody is collectively saying, experiential teaching learning methods are the way to go, for the success of our students. And then it's a collective journey for the entire education department in that district to adopt experiential teaching learning methods. Right? That's a kind of very high level overview of what we do.
Right. I think that is great work, Rajeev. Caring with Colors has developed, this kind of model where you are empowering or creating awareness in the hierarchy of the education system in the government school as well, which is, I think, creates the base to help the teachers to carry those experiential learning in a proper manner and put it forward to the students, right? So that is very, very important for student success as well. So, yeah. What process or solution CWC follows to train the teachers, and what aspects or skills the teachers are trained on? You must be facing challenges as well when it comes to delivering these trainings. So if you can talk about those challenges as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Nothing in the field can ever be done without challenges, right?
Yeah.
So, but let me take a step back, right? So when we say train the teachers, right? Teacher training is not a new thing in the education department. In fact, there is a ton of training that's already provided to the teachers. Where our trainings are significantly different are that we don't sit in our own silo to create these training programs, right? We are very much there on the ground, talking to the teachers, talking to the teacher trainers, talking to dietes to truly understand what are the actual specific training needs of the teachers, right? So we collect a lot of data and insights from the teachers, which once when you analyze that data, you will be able to figure out what exactly is the training need of the teacher, and not just at a high level, but on a concept by concept level. in the textbook that a teacher needs to use inside the classroom. So we have very granular data on what the actual training needs of the teachers are. Now, number two is when we create these training programs, we co-develop these training programs with the teachers and teacher mentors who are like this special category of teachers that we have trained to step up and become teacher plus plus. Let's call them that. Right? They're one step above the regular teachers. Although they are regular teachers themselves coming from the system, they have a higher skill set. They have the ability to take that, get to that higher notch and be able to really think of what else the other teachers will need and be able to mentor other teachers. So we work very closely with teacher mentors. We work very closely with the diets to constantly co-develop and keep fine-tuning every single training program to a point where the teachers feel that whatever is being given is exactly matching my needs, right? So that's the kind of rigor that we follow. And the delivery of these training programs is again done quite differently, right? So what we do is we have created this entire layer of teachers called as teacher mentors, like I was mentioning. These teacher mentors bring the teachers to one common training point, in their own local geography. We call it a Hobley Level Learning Center, HLC, Hobley Learning Center. And teachers all come there. Teacher mentor goes into this training center. We provide all the training to the teacher mentor on what kind of experiential teaching learning methods need to be taught to the teachers specifically for the syllabus that they need to teach in the classroom over the next 1 month, right? It's like they're keeping it very, very modular. And all the teacher mentors and teachers gather in these Hobley Level Learning Centers and they conduct activities. It's not a philosophical, one-way lecture that is being given to the teachers, right? It's a very, very hands-on learning process that is happening in these Hobley Learning Centers where teachers get to try out their own ideas. They're exchanging ideas with each other. They're seeing that, there is that teacher who has brought her own experience from what she taught last year. And I'm adding my experience. And the teacher mentor is giving this, beautiful explanation of, what is the nuance in this topic and how to make sure that children are understanding this better. So it's a very, very vibrant space that they're able to create where there is a lot of peer learning that is happening. And that, in addition to material that is very, very custom made, right? Very, very contextual to the needs of the teacher, gets combined with now this, creating this enabling ecosystem part of it that comes into the picture where all the education officers, the cluster level officers, block level officers, they all come to that Hobley Level Learning Center. They're all following what the teachers are actually learning, and they are adding their own bit of, experience and, expertise to the discussion. And together, they're all going back to the classrooms, right? So it's sort of everybody coming together, like I was saying, right? That unified vision and goal, all of that materializes in this Hobley Level Learning Centers that we have created. So that's a kind of nuance and the a little bit of detail that goes into our training programs, which is why right now we have close to about 3,000 teachers every month voluntarily participating in our training programs month after month, right? We have a program called as District Education Transformation Program going on in Tumkuru that we have been doing for the past 2 years, and we have 3,000 teachers voluntarily participating every month. Now, for this to happen, there is a whole big machinery of the system that needs to be moved for such a program to happen, right? Imagine 3,000 teachers across 10 blocks of a district. 53 different Hobley Level Learning Centers have been created that need to, think of the amount of logistics that need to be moved within the district level to make that happen on a single day at the single time, right? So there is a whole mountain that needs to be moved. So at a logistical level, there are several challenges, right? But the one challenge that I always feel very difficult to overcome is there are so many teachers in the system that are interested to attend this program, but they happen to be in schools that are single teacher schools, right? Or two teacher schools.
Okay.
So how do you now take that teacher away from the school and take her to a learning center when if the teacher steps out, there is absolutely no one in the school? School can't run without a teacher, right? If there is only one teacher, you can't take that teacher away from the school.
Right.
And we know for a fact that there are a good number of those teachers who are interested in participating. So I don't know how to solve that challenge. We have been facing a lot of difficulty in really getting to the single teacher and two teacher schools. We are trying to send out. We are trying to use some online media to send some useful information and recorded programs to these teachers, but no recorded program is same as having a actual hands-on learning experience with peers, right? I think the only way to solve for them is when the department is able to staff the schools with enough number of teachers that each of them can have their own good quality professional development program participation. But for now, I think that's the best we are able to do. Hopefully, we're looking forward to a point in time when there are no single teacher schools in the system. There must be no single teacher schools or two teacher schools, right? We strongly feel about the fact that if there is a school, if you have 5 classrooms in a school, you must have 5 teachers, regardless of the student strength.
Right.
But at this point is just far away from that kind of a teacher strength. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. Like, I want to just thank you for explaining it so deeply, like how the system works and how you are creating a full ecosystem around the training and how it can create a positive impact at a larger scale. So that's great to know about, and how Caring with Colors is working, like despite the challenges you spoke about. So hats off to you and your team. I think
Thank you.
training, yeah, and training teachers is very important for student success and improving the learning and ensuring high quality education.
If you really think about it from the viewpoint of a teacher going to an average, rural government school, right? Yes, they have a government job, which you can call as a stable job, but really, a teacher is going into a very rural part of the country. It is very difficult to commute to these places. There's just one teacher or two teachers in the school, and the teacher not only has to take care of the actual academic work, but there's a ton of administrative work that needs to be taken care of. Forms that need to be filled out. They need to take care of the village community, SDMCs, like a whole bunch of other things that are much beyond teaching in a classroom that consume her time, and there is limited amount of time as a resource that is available for her that she needs to spend. And if you really think about it from what who are the people in the ecosystem who are regularly talking to her, so the teacher is all by herself without any support, and she is a one-man army really fighting all the administrative challenges. The children in these areas come with a lot of their own baggage of child labor, domestic abuse. There is a lot of baggage that children are carrying into the classrooms, and now she needs to take care of the students from that social angle as well, and then also have to put in the time to teach properly in a qualitative fashion. It's a very, very challenging role when you have a teacher who is thinking of the bare minimum getting by because of all the constraints in the system. Getting her to think of something much beyond bare minimum, it's a mindset thing, right? You need to really be able to motivate the teachers.
Right.
And we specifically bring in several aspects of our programs that teachers are able to be motivated. They should feel that okay, there is a higher purpose to my job despite all the challenges, and that's something that we constantly try to work on, so that teachers are able to connect to that higher purpose of teaching and being a teacher, and that's what keeps them motivated to not only come to our training programs, but also take something back from that training program back into the classroom. It's a very, very tough job, and my heart always goes to the teachers. It really motivates me to see so many teachers coming despite all the challenges that they have. They come, they participate in the training programs, and they constantly try to do a better job. It really, motivates me like anything to see teachers doing that.
Right, right. I think yes, motivation is one of the thing which is very much required in the government school, in the teachers of the government school, because as you said, they are doing a lot of work, not only teaching, admin work, HR work, maybe like everything they are doing. So, and they get very little time to grow themselves, to improve their learning skills and all those things. So, and also I'm surprised to know that government schools are run by only one or two teachers. That's like people like us, we don't know like how the government schools are running, right? So it's really a surprise to know that.
There are a
So
lot of schools with zero teachers.
zero teachers. Okay, then I will call it not a school, right?
Yeah, so it's really funny how the government school system works, and it really points to a sad state of affairs of how we treat our government school system. We literally have about 65-70% of our future generations relying on government schools for their education, and there is not much investments that go into the system. Or I would say the right way to put it is the investments going into the system is not to the level that is required to get by, sometimes even the bare minimum, right? But if we have to really shoot for good quality universal education, right? If we say universal quality education is the goal for us as a country, the investments that are being done are not to the level that are required.
Right, right. I can understand that. And as you are mentioning that almost 60 or 70% of the future generation are dependent on the government schools and not the private schools, because everyone cannot afford looking at the population of India. So I would like to ask you, like, what steps the government should take to strengthen the education system?
Good question, but there are several dimensions to how do we improve the system, because it's a very large system, right? We are
Right.
talking about 150 million children. We are talking about 8 million teachers, 2 million schools. So the
Right.
size of the system is such big. So, it's so large that obviously it's going to be a multi-dimensional problem, right? The way I think about it, I look at it from for the sake of simplicity of thinking, right? I categorize the problem into, broadly speaking, two different buckets.
Right.
One is the education system definitely needs a significant structural reform, right? In the sense, how do we allocate the budgets, right? How many teachers do we have? How many schools do we have? And are the officers in the education system, are they being given all the wherewithal required to monitor the system properly, to manage the system properly? There are a whole slew of things where things are not working optimally, right? For example, there are several um, uh, uh, committee reports that have been out there dating back to almost 1960s, which have been stating that the education system budget for a country like India, right, developing country like India, it needs to have at least 6% of the GDP as expenditure on education system, so that you are developing the future workforce. We hardly spend 3%. It's not even 3%. I think most of the times it's about 2.8% of the GDP. Sometimes I think about between 2.8 to 2.9, but that's been stagnant at that level. So the expenditure that we have on education, it's not even keeping pace with the GDP growth that we have as a country, right? 7-8% GDP growth. So the growth in the expenditure in the education system is not keeping pace with that percentage that we have. So there is a need to really rethink how we spend, how much we spend, on what do we spend. There is a lot of structural reform that is really required. What makes it complicated is the fact that education is a concurrent subject in the Constitution, which means both the center and the state, both of them have a divided responsibility to make sure that education system as a machine works properly. So there is always disconnect between what the political dispensation in the center says versus what the state says. There are always gaps between the two, how much center allocates and how much state actually receives and how it spends and on what does it spend and how efficiently it spends. Again, it goes into a lot of nitty-gritty details of the administrative processes that run. But long story short, though, that administrative reform, restructuring needs to be done. It needs to be done if we have to ensure that the students of today are a proper future-ready workforce in the future, right? Because the dropout rates, the kind of skill rates that we have, the kind of pass percentages that we have, it's not, if we have to become a $10 trillion, $15 trillion, $20 trillion economy in the next, 10, 15, 20 years, we cannot reach those goals with the kind of education structures we have, right? And a key part of that is taking a good look at the administrative structures and reforming those structures. That's one part of the story. The second part of the story is the whole idea that the curriculum and the pedagogy that we have in the schools, that in itself again needs a very big reform, right? Curriculum is what you teach, broadly speaking, and pedagogy is how you teach it. And I think there is broad consensus across the education sector that what we have today as curriculum and pedagogy is really a vestige of the past 100, 150 years, right? Nothing much has changed fundamentally and structurally on what we are teaching our kids and how we are teaching kids. The focus still remains on memorizing certain kind of concepts that are there in the textbook and being able to reproduce them in what we are calling as exams. And even students who are able to reasonably or very well able to replicate the concepts in the exam and get good, quote unquote, good marks, once when they step out of the school, they step out of the colleges, really isn't amounting to anything much, because by the time these kids graduate from college and they go to the industry for jobs, the industry, on the other hand, has been consistently saying for the past couple of decades now, year after year, saying that the students who are graduating from our colleges are not employable, right? They're saying that 75, 80%, sometimes even 85 to 90% of the students are not employable, which means the industry now has to take them and retrain them all over again to meet their own job requirements. In the context of how fast the industry is evolving in the current day and age, right? We have so much, AI and automation and robotics that is creeping into every sector of the economy.
Right.
It is very, very hard to really imagine what kind of jobs will actually be there out in the industry, 10 to 15 years from now. So if we don't know what jobs are going to be there, then what should we really do, right? Education system is, one of its basic purposes is to make sure that, you're trying to take the kids and make them, job ready. Right. If you don't know what jobs are there, how do you make them job ready? And that's where, various, educationalists have been calling for the focus of the education system to be on developing what are called as 21st century skills, right? These are skills like communication, collaboration, creative thinking, critical thinking, empathy, technology awareness, technology savviness, right? Real world problem solving with an entrepreneurial mindset. All of these are skills. And if you develop these skills, right, and not just focus on content mastery, right? Do I know how to solve binomial theorem, or do I know, what is the equation of a, chemical formula? That is required. I'm not saying that's not required. Content mastery is required to a certain extent, but beyond that, skill development is very important. And if that skill has been inculcated in the students, developed in the students, once when they graduate out of their colleges and schools, regardless of whatever jobs may exist at that time, there is a higher chance that students will easily be able to mold themselves to fit the jobs that are out there in the future. So when we take a step back and ask ourselves the question, is the current schooling system really doing the job of inculcating these skills? The answer is plain no, right? There is hardly any focus on developing skills as a goal. So again, a whole slew of reform is probably required. Curricular and pedagogical reform is required to ensure that experiential teaching, learning, and skill-focused teaching and learning becomes the center of the learning process inside the classroom.
As rightly explained by you, Rajeev, the Indian education system is a complex and diverse system that has evolved over centuries. And though we have made significant progress in recent years, but still, I think there are a lot of challenges still that we have to overcome, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And as you are mentioning about the curriculum as well, so I would like to understand like whether there is any particular kind of curriculum which the government school follows or like they are mandated to follow any specific curriculum, and are the curriculum updated from time to time?
Yes, the schools are required to follow specific curricula. Like for example, all the government schools, they broadly follow what you can call as the state syllabus curriculum. Okay. There are the general parlance that you find is there are my child goes to CBSE school, right, or an ICSE school or an IG school. Those right. are also different curricula that those specific private schools subscribe to. But broadly speaking, all of these have their base in what the NCERT right sets as age-appropriate learning outcomes for each grade. And right. based on those learning outcomes, each of these curriculum development authorities, they develop their own syllabus, which is for those learning outcomes to be achieved inside a classroom. How do I teach those? With what lessons do I actually teach? Is something that these curriculum authorities, they decide, and each of them, they handle it slightly differently. Like for example, CBSE is slightly different from ICSE, which is slightly different from IG, CSE, IB, etc. Right? But broadly speaking, each school, depending on the curriculum they do subscribe to, they do have to follow that curriculum as defined by the appropriate curriculum authority. Now the question is it revised? That's where things become tricky. No, they are not. Unfortunately, they're not revised. The revision of the curriculum and the syllabus happens, at least the NCERT or CBSE, curricula was revised, has been a good 10, 15 plus years. Now, with the new NEP in place, I think there is a new national curriculum framework that is being drafted, and based on that new draft of the national curriculum framework, syllabus revision happens. I think we need to have a policy where curriculum gets refreshed at least once in every 5 years, right? Any new developments that right. are happening in the scientific field and mathematics field.
Right. I totally agree with you, Rajeev, here. And this is really insightful. The curriculum definitely plays an important role in shaping the minds of young learners and preparing them for future challenges, right? Yes. And I think hearing about all these things from you, it's a kind of mind opener for all of us. And even if someone is thinking to, do something in the field of education, they'll get a great insight from this conversation, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, Rajeev, we have talked about the education system and all these systems. So what about the infrastructure like sanitation, hygiene, chairs and tables, and other equipments, etc., which is also very important, right? So I think funding is a big issue to make government schools at par to other private schools. So do you see there is some gap here, or have things improved over the years?
Yeah, I think in terms of infrastructure, I would definitely say that things have improved quite a bit, right? I think somewhere around 2001, 2002, the whole idea of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, which is universal education, has come in, and since then, the amount of funding towards the infrastructure building of schools has gone up, right? Which is access to education has gone up, and I think RTE, the Right to Education Act, has also significantly helped. It has put in rules in place which says that a child shouldn't have to, at a primary level, a child shouldn't have to walk more than 2 kilometers to reach a school. So that has definitely increased the number of schools that we have.
Okay.
Uh, but the question that really needs to be thought about is the infrastructure that has been built sufficient to produce quality outcomes? And the answer again is no, right? Again, just building a building with a few rooms really doesn't do much, right? Has there been enough put into those rooms to make them properly operational, right? Efficient operations in a way that teachers are able to, use. There's still plenty of schools where mobile phones don't work, internet connectivity is long shot. Electricity is very intermittent, if at all there is one. Midday meal is one program where I think we have to really pat on our backs as a nation, where we are ensuring that whenever a child comes to school, he or she doesn't go back hungry, right? There's at least one good meal that is provided to the student. So from that standpoint, fantastic job has been done by, regardless of which political dispensation has been out there, holding power. They have ensured that midday meal is happening properly. But in terms of quality infrastructure, I think there is still a long way to go. A lot more investment is required. Not just from the viewpoint of schools and labs and benches and desks that you're talking about. How do you make teaching efficient? How do you make teaching effective? Right? There is a lot of infrastructure investment that is required there. And what we have right now, the budgets are, I don't think they're coming close to being sufficient to achieve effective outcomes in the classroom.
Right, right. Very true, Rajiv. I think I also feel that there is a significant gap still. It is there in government schools, like between government schools and private schools in India in terms of infrastructure. Like you mentioned, it's not only about the building or the structure of the school. What is going inside the school is also forms part of the infrastructure. And due to different factors like inadequate funding or lack of accountability, etc., those are the things which are having a significant impact on student learning outcomes as well. So that area also needs to be taken into account, right?
Yeah.
Hearing about all these things, Rajiv, if you can put some light on the tech part, like are you using any tech to build these training systems, or how the technology is helping you to make the training more effective?
Yes. So we actually have our own technology platform. It's called as Teachopia.
Okay.
Right now, it is in the form of an Android app that can be downloaded from Google Play Store, and that app has all the experiential teaching learning content that we have ever created, right? And this spans from grades 4 through 7 for the 3 critical subjects: mathematics, science, and English. So any teacher who wants to teach any particular learning outcome in these grades will find an experiential lesson plan, experiential worksheets, gamified content, the training modules that we have conducted for teachers in a recorded format for the teachers to actually go through and gain a greater knowledge. So all of that content is hosted on Teachopia, and we have taken a very conscious choice to keep it free of cost, right? While we have put in a lot of research and development effort and a lot of money investment into creating this, we wanted to make sure that this kind of high quality content is accessible to every teacher in the country. So we have taken a very conscious choice to keep it all free of cost. Now, Teachopia as a platform also has a training management system. While the content management system takes care of providing, catering to all the content needs of the teachers, there is also a training management system which has the capability to integrate into the government structures, right? So education department has a certain hierarchy. So our system is designed in such a way that the department will be able to adopt that system, and the department officers will be able to seamlessly conduct training programs using our systems, in a way that they exactly know how many teachers are participating, what is the quality of participation, are they actually learning anything from these, training programs or not. And there are, again, also a whole bunch of tools that are available for the department officers to go into the classrooms, post the training program, to observe how the classroom transaction is actually happening, to see whether what has been taught to the teachers in the training programs is translating into an actual classroom utilization of the training methods or not. App is now deployed across Tumkuru and Ramnagara districts, where the education functionaries download this app, they use the content training programs, etc. But in general, I think you were trying to ask about, in general, the need for technology inside the education system, and the answer is yes, right? There is more technology that is required, but I would qualify it by saying that the need to put technology in front of students is actually not that much, right? There are a lot of edtech solutions that put a tablet or a Android phone or app in front of the child directly, hoping that this tablet or the screen will replace the role of a teacher, right? The philosophy there is, if you can provide good quality engaging content on the screen, teacher is not required, or teacher's role can be somehow replaced. That may be true at a higher age segment. Let's say if you're talking about 16, 17, or 18 plus, where the adult learner is a self-driven, engaged learner, they can direct their own learning process.
Right.
It may be possible that you might be able to replace teacher to some extent, definitely not fully. But at a primary school level or at a schooling level, you definitely cannot replace a teacher, right? Because at a primary school level, learning happens through the interactions. It's kind of a very, very human-centric interaction that needs to happen between a teacher and a child. We feel that technology at a school level needs to be there in the background,
right,
behind the learning process, helping the teacher teach better, right? And technology, maybe there is some use to putting a screen in front of the students for certain little aspects of teaching, but you can actually make do without it, right? If you don't have a screen in front of a child at a primary school level, no big deal at all. I don't think there is any, or I should say, there is not sufficient evidence to show that teacher can be replaced with a screen, right? It's more important to have a good teacher and an empowered teacher, a teacher with access to all the teaching resources that she will require to teach properly. So that is the role that we feel technology must play at a school level, and which is why all the technology functions that we have been creating on Teachopia are all teacher centric, right? We did not develop any student centric features in our technology platform. So technology in various forms is used in our program. Definitely all of these kind of interventions at a teacher level and at an administration level, right? How do you ensure that the officers have the right kind of technology tools so that they're managing the system better, they have the visibility and the controllability of the system better, bringing a little bit of technical terminology in there. So the technology needs to play the role of improving the efficiency of the system. There is no integrated data collection, data analytics, and data monitoring tools that are being made available to the officers. Again, there's a whole range of functions that the officers can use where the technology can significantly improve the functioning of the department, actually reduce the cost of the department as well, right?
Right.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, totally. I think Teachopia, as you said, is a technology platform, which is again a training management system as well, where you can track your data related to the training and content as well. So that's a great thought, I think. And I really like the thought process behind this Teachopia, that you teach teachers and not putting all those screens or all those experiential learning to the students directly. It should go through the teacher and through activities and not through the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think inclusion of tech is very critical these days, and great to see nonprofits like Caring with Colors including tech as one of their critical aspects in their work. And I really like the idea that, again, it should be teacher centric, like it has been made teacher centric and not student centric, because the teacher is the one who should play the role to make the learning more experiential to the students and not the TV screens or like that. Because I'm also a mother and I can totally resemble how it is when teacher when your kid sees the phone all the time and he wants the phone to do something and not doing activities.
Yeah, exactly.
I can totally
Unfortunately, we are living in a day and age where
yeah.
looking at a screen is more prevalent than looking at another human face. So yeah.
Exactly. That's what is happening. So we have talked about different things like the drawback of the traditional curriculum system, the advantages of the experiential learning, and how you train the teachers, and the critical role of the teacher in a student's success. So I'm thinking about, like, are the teachers easily adapting the same while giving back to the students?
What we are able to see at this point is that pretty much 80-90% of all the concepts that are being transacted in the learning centers through our training programs, they're getting translated into the classroom. They're actually doing all those activities and experiential methods in the classroom. There are some teachers, interestingly, who are going above and beyond the methods given in the training program, and they're coming up with their own experiential methods based on their own experience and their own knowledge. And our data says that a good 44-45% of teachers over the past year or so, they have gone that one step further, and they said all these activities are fine, but I think my classroom requires a separate customized app.
Right. That's lovely to hear about. And I think this part is generally ignored by most. Even if you're providing the training to the teachers, you're not gathering the data, how they are taking it to the students, which is a very critical part of the program, right? So great to know that, CWC is also concentrating on solving this as well.
Yeah.
So now I'm really eager to know about the students. So how are students liking the new method of learning, and are we seeing the difference in students' progress?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just the dynamic of the classroom completely changes once when you start teaching experientially through activities, right? Because imagine a student who has been told all his schooling life that he or she needs to sit with a finger on lips and just listen to what the teacher is saying, write down. That's it, right? No active engagement from the student is expected. But
Right.
now you switch things over and you tell the child you have to be active. You can talk, you can move around, you can do things in the classroom. Children have a blast, right? It's such a fun, vibrant, classroom environment that gets built in the classrooms, and whenever we go into the field, we see that with our own eyes, and teachers, are beginning to wonder all these kids who I thought were backbenchers, who I thought were never going to show interest in the education, are
Right.
now starting to ask questions. There is curiosity, and they're engaged in the classroom. So yes. So at a student level, there is a complete shift in the energy and the dynamic of the classroom once when you start teaching with experiential teaching learning methods, right?
Right.
And the trick is for the teachers to be able to sustain that kind of a method rigorously enough and long enough that students are slowly inculcating the skills in the classroom. And skill development happens very slowly.
Right.
And that is where we are now slowly starting to develop some research methods to understand how the skill building is happening. We are very much in the initial stages of the of that R&D process. Um, what we have found is that unfortunately, our education system does not have any systematic methods to measure skill development in students, right? In a classroom. So that kind of a research base is not there. It's going to be a very difficult, long-drawn process. It may take another 2-3 years for us to really come out with a proper set of metrics that teachers can use. But we have embarked on that process. Let's see where it goes. And hopefully we'll, soon enough, we'll be at a point where we can actually measure the skill development of the child also in a systematic way and see how the experiential teaching learning methods are resulting in improvement in the skill in the classroom.
Right. I think, yes, data collection is very important in this aspect to actually measure the impact which is happening on the ground. And that's again a long process. I can understand because I know how impact can be measured or something like that. So I can totally understand it takes a lot of time. And but if proper research is done, then if you get the impact measurement, then it's a very good tool to, improve your programs or like work on those challenges as well. So that's great to know that your team is again doing a research on that as well. So a lot of things Caring with Colors is going to do in the education field. Right. So Rajiv, we have talked on different aspects of education system, be it traditional education, be it government schools, be it private schools, be it experiential learning, be it training the teachers. Now, like there is a buzz around homeschooling as well. And more after the COVID scenario happened. So like, what are your thoughts on homeschooling?
We are now homeschooling one of our 2 kids this year. We have started homeschooling one of our child. So I probably can speak, purely from the experience of homeschooling one of my sons. See, I think I look at it from 2-3 different angles, right? So one is if you have a child with some very specific needs, let's say you have a child who's excellent in some art or schooling, and you see a bright future for your child in that domain. The child needs to have the flexibility to spend enough time to hone their skills, right? And that cannot happen if your child is parallelly in school because the entire day is gone in school.
Right.
So there are those scenarios where I feel homeschooling actually works well, where the child is given all the opportunity to hone their skills in their own area of interest, and education and learning in the regular conventional subjects can be taken care of the parents. That is one scenario. The second scenario that I see is there is a growing segment of parents who are wanting to bring in a very conscious education process to their kids. They are asking the question, what is education really? What kind of education do I really want for my child? And how do I want that education to be given? And is the school that I'm sending my child to able to provide that kind of education in a way that the right kind of outcomes are provided for my child? So if you are like a DIYer kind of a parent who is asking these reflective questions and saying maybe the school that I'm sending my child to is not providing the kind of learning process or the education that I really want, then obviously homeschooling is a very, very good alternative, because those are the kind of parents who bring a very thoughtful way to provide that learning space for their children. But regardless of whichever category that a parent belongs to, it is very important for the parent to be a part and parcel of the learning process, right? The parent also needs to be a child. Parent also needs to learn. The parent also needs to be able to willing to go through the same process that you're asking your child to, because you need to really be able to sit and learn the same topics or learn the same skills and go through that learning process hand in hand with your child. And that is what I feel provides the most fruitful learning experience for the child. And the child also starts to look at you as a friend and a peer, rather than an overbearing parent who is always there to monitor you, right? So that's again a very important part of the mindset that is required for homeschooling. So long story short, I guess homeschooling is is a great thing if you can be a homeschooling parent. If you're able to bring that time and energy, there is absolutely nothing like it. I don't think there is any third-party teacher who will be able to give that kind of learning space for your children. But if you have time constraints, bandwidth constraints, uh,
Right.
there is a system already in place. It's called as a schooling system.
Right.
If you want lifelong learners who are conscious, who are self-reflective, then I think a different kind of a learning environment needs to be provided, which a school generally cannot, because it's some mass manufacturing system that they have. So
Right.
individualized customization cannot happen in a school. That's how the system is structured. So if you're concerned about these things, I think homeschooling is definitely an option that people have to look at. And I do see a lot of parents these days talking about homeschooling.
Yeah.
We ourselves are trying it out. So
That's great to know. I think you have a lot of experience with the education system. And this may be a new concept which may evolve over time as the time goes, right? So, and good to know about the different perspectives which you have put forward for the homeschooling. So, moving on, coming to some general questions on the social sector now. Like, what do you feel are three most pressing issues for a non-profit where they need support?
So I think NGO as a sector has actually evolved a bit, I would say, over the past 10, 15 years.
Right.
Mostly driven by two factors. One is the compliance regime that has been asked for, of the NGOs. It has become much stricter. Means a lot of NGOs are, forced to become more and more professional, more structured in the kind of work that they do. Traditionally, a lot of NGOs have been sort of loosely structured. One person sets up an NGO to help out, hungry people or street kids. These are all things that are generally, done as a what you can call as last mile delivery of service to the people who are not getting the service, right? Whether it is because there is, there is no government school in that area, which is why you're trying to build a school and educate the street kids, or there are some specific instances. Let's say you're in a tribal area and the tribal kids don't have proper meal or proper schooling or proper hospital, and you go build that particular thing and then you run it, right? So that's the kind of last mile delivery of service that NGOs have been playing. And all of these compliance regime changes are forcing, regardless of whichever type of NGO you are, to become more professional, more streamlined in the way things are being done. But there is a second aspect that is also happening, where there are NGOs that are coming in, newer type of NGOs that are saying, hey, NGOs don't necessarily only have to play the role of a last mile delivery of service when government services are not being provided. There are so many problems in the society, in various segments of the society and various sectors of the society, where the problems are very, very deep rooted. The problems are not being solved by the private sector because there is not enough monetization capability for the private sector to step in.
Right.
And these problems are not being solved by the government because government, by the very nature and structure of it, it's a big monolith, and it's hard for governments to be flexible enough to come and solve problems that require innovative thinking. Then there is this third sector, NGO sector, which, if structured properly, it is very well suited to bring innovative solutions to the social space of the development space in general, right? So where you have a problem, you can create solutions that will very precisely address the problems, not at an individual microcosmic level, but at a systemic level, right? You may not always be able to monetize your solution because the end recipients of your solution are people who are at the bottom of the pyramid and they can't afford to pay you. right? But you as an NGO, you are capable of bringing in funds from elsewhere to sustain your operations. And then you can, collaborate with, NGOs, funders, government, and various other stakeholders to make sure that your innovative solution at a systemic level is applied to the entire segment of the population that you're trying to address. So there are a good number of these NGOs that are coming into space just to bring in innovation as the key deliverable to this space. Now, I'm going to talk purely from the viewpoint of that kind of NGOs, because we look at ourselves as that kind of an NGO. Like, for example, we stepped in, we know that there is not enough research base that is there around experiential teaching, learning, content or training programs, or, how do we bring in alignment of the department officers towards a common vision and goal. There are several innovative solutions that we are bringing into space. We know that we can't go to a government school teacher and ask her to pay for our solution. We can't ask the government to pay for our solution because the government, frankly, doesn't have the budget for it. So, but we know that the solution that we are creating belongs to a very specific, high-end knowledge kind of an organization space, right? So from the viewpoint of this new genre of organizations, there are several things that really are required, right? For example, we need people who can take the risk, funders who can take the risk with their capital, just like, if you're trying to invest in any regular entrepreneur where they're trying to bring a product to the market and you're looking for a return on investment through your capital, that it may succeed, it may fail, right? I think the same holds good even in the social space, right? If someone is trying to something new, there is a good chance that your solution may not be effective. It may fail. So we need people who can bring that kind of a social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship funding mindset to this space where they can say that yes, we have tried this genuinely, it did not work, which means there must be a different solution. Let's move on, right? So that kind of risk capital, which requires development of newer systemic solutions are required, not just in the education space, but all across in environment space, health, women and child welfare, every space you name it. And there are other big needs in terms of the governments. I think they also need to start looking at the NGOs in a different light altogether, right? They need to look at NGOs not as someone who will go and deliver that last mile service, but NGOs can be genuine partners in the creation, the design and development of the solutions that the government can adopt. And there is not much of a recognition, across the government space where they look at NGOs as, knowledge partners and innovation partners, right? So I think that is also a big need. And the third, space where I see is how the NGOs seek funding from various funding segments, right? Like, for example, the CSR segments. There is a lot of family-driven philanthropy that is happening in India. There are UHNIs, HNIs, various segments that are willing to fund, but still a lot of funding either is driven through emotional kind of giving. Like, for example, a lot of retail funding, right? Moms and pops and people like you and me. A lot of giving happens still at a very emotional level. Because I connect with someone and, I give that, 1,000, 2,000 rupees or 100, 200 rupees, right? So all of these different segments of donors, I think they need to also, the need for them to look at the larger picture and say, what is the impact that I'm able to create on a longer term basis? Right. For example, even the CSR organizations, a good number of CSR organizations that we have personally spoken to, they do fantastic work, in whatever they do. I don't, have any gripe with that. But a good number of their CSR investments go into, let's say, building a school building or building a toilet, or giving bags or, laptops, or whatever it may be in the education segment. But we need to also move beyond that and ask the question, okay, what is happening after I have built the school, right? Is the learning that is supposed to happen after I built the school, is it happening, right? And if it is not happening, why is it not happening? And what can I do to make sure that I take the journey of the purpose of my investment is to improve the quality of education for kids. I go all the way to make sure that the end result deliverable must be quality education for kids, and we must be willing to do whatever is required to make sure that happens. So I think a little bit of a mindset shift, what kind of questions we ponder on while we are making funding investments into the social sector. I think there are nuanced areas in this kind of a domain where people can actually come together. They can form a collective and say that if there are these 5 CSR organizations that are all interested in, let's say, environment space, instead of each organization trying to do its own little thing, if they become a collective, they'll actually be able to sustain and support a much larger initiative at a systemic level. Same is the case with health, nutrition, education, you name it, right? So it is important for also the funders to start looking at solutions at a systemic level. Say, what can I do to make sure that my funding, or at least a part of my funding, is going to solutions that will create system level solutions and system wide improvements in whatever metrics that I'm trying to look at. We know that a good amount of funding now actually goes into education. I think overall, if you look at the statistics coming from last year, I think last year 2022 year had about 27,000 crores worth of CSR expenditure all across India. That's a handful of money. And then I think about 40% of that goes into education. But a good majority of that 40% goes into, again, mostly, brick and mortar kind of things. Not that it's not required. Definitely it is required, but I think a more nuanced and, mindful conversation needs to happen around what are we funding, why are we funding, are we getting what we want to achieve, and how do we make sure that the solutions are systemic in nature.
Right. I think very, very insightful things which you have talked upon right now. And I think you're absolutely bang on. These are the most pressing issues, like you said, the funding requirement is more. And again, I think the corporates take the easy way out for their CSR and not going much into the deep level research-based program. And that is very much required actually for the development of our country as a whole. And I also like the idea about your saying that 4 or 5 NGOs, sorry, 4 or 5 corporates come together with their CSR and they invest in one big kind of program which totally helps in improving the system on a larger scale, on a larger level. That would be actually a good real-time change or a long-term impact which it can create. So that was very, very knowledgeable session with you, Rajeev. Thanks for sharing all those insightful thoughts with us and our audience. So lastly, I would like to ask you, what advice would you give to the social entrepreneurs who want to work towards, betterment of education?
Education is, it's obviously a very vast sector, but the meaning of what it means to educate a child is significantly changed. I feel actually education and what we do in the education system goes to the foundations of that thought process, right? In the sense that, we keep talking about holistic education, right? But what does that holistic education actually mean? It's not just, how do you get children to learn the subject content better, right? So the holistic education is the idea where there is a proper intellectual and skill growth of the child. There is a social and emotional growth of the child. There is a physical and well-being growth of the child, and there is also a spiritual growth of the child,
Right.
All of them going hand in hand in a balanced way creates a balanced human being.
Absolutely.
We now have an education system where we are neither focusing on the spiritual growth, and by which I'm not talking about religious aspects at all, right? Spirituality is significantly, distinctly different from religion in my viewpoint.
Right.
Not looking at the spiritual growth, we are not looking at the physical growth or the well-being, we are not looking at social, emotional growth of the child. And even within the intellectual and skill growth, we are looking only at the intellectual, that too in a narrow segment of the growth, which is, how do you memorize concepts and then reproduce in the exam. So it's not even proper intellectual growth and the skill growth of the child. So
right.
If we have to move our education system from where it is to where we have a much more meaningful and a much more holistic growth of the child in a systemic way through the education system, we really need solutions that touch upon all the other aspects of what it means to be a human being, right? All the other aspects of the holistic education. We really, as a society, we have not evolved the right kind of solutions to the other aspects of that holistic education. And it may seem like some of these are far-fetched ideas at this point in time, but we really need people to start paying attention to these things.
Right.
If we talk about how do we do the rest of it in the education system at a systemic level, you may not find many takers at this point in time, but we really need people to go into those areas, do the right kind of research and development to figure out what kind of solutions can be adopted at a systemic level. I can tell you, right, even as far back as 2016, 17, when we were starting our own organization and we said experiential teaching learning needs to be the center of the classroom. And when we were talking about this to various kinds of stakeholders, funders, government department officials, and others, everybody was like, yeah, don't bring unnecessary terminology. Education system as such is complicated.
Right.
Where do you come up with this experiential education? It may be happening in, US or Norway or, wherever all the fancy countries, government schools, it won't happen, right? But we kept our focus on the fact that we as a country, we don't have a choice but to move in that direction. And sooner or later, the government will come out with a policy that will emphasize on experiential teaching learning. And long story short, now we have NEP 2020, which so heavily emphasizes experiential teaching learning. Right? So it was a little bit of a, sort of a gut feeling and foresight that we had to bring in, and trust that, end of the day, education system requires good solutions. That is why we embarked on it, and now we know that everybody acknowledges experiential teaching learning as the key to the education system. So similarly, there are all these other aspects of the education system, and if you're a social entrepreneur who is wanting to, participate in the reform, fundamental reform of the education system, there are several areas that are completely unexplored. Right. Think about that. Think about what the future of the education system is going to look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And where do you think the solution will fit in? And how do you think the solution will help the student become a much more healthy and productive, citizen of the future, right? So going to those areas, and I'm pretty sure that journey will be personally fruitful for the entrepreneur, and I'm pretty sure it will be a great value addition to the education system.
Right. I think all points mentioned by you, Rajiv, are really and absolutely noteworthy and important ones. And we need more social entrepreneurs today to work towards solving the issues and the social issues we have been dealing with, right? So thank you, Rajiv, for taking out some time today and talking with us on the education, which is a very critical aspect for the development of any country, right? And education as a field has a lot more to be done, and more reforms may be needed. And you spoke on all critical aspects like increasing the investing in education. Maybe it focused on vocational trainings and soft skills, skill development, encouraging critical thinking, and all are important for long-term development of the country, right? And Caring with Colors under your leadership is doing exemplary work and helping India move one step ahead in this journey, I think. So wishing all the best to you and your team to keep creating more and more positive impact and reach out to more and more government schools and teachers in future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neha. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. A lot of insightful questions. So kudos to that. So thank you for asking very good questions. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.